Imagine young children playing outside at recess and adults forced to go about their daily routines as automatic weapons are going off in the nearest town plazas. This was just an average occurrence in Vieques, Puerto Rico. Not too many years before this, the rallying cry rang out, "Que se vaya la Marina." The Puerto Rican people were clear in their message. We want the U.S. Navy out. Boricuas would chant this loudly, hoping the U.S. military would stop the bombing of Vieques and Culebra, two municipalities in the Puerto Rican archipelago. Many people are aware of the 1999 protests on Vieques Island, where the accidental death of David Sanes Rodriguez provoked and rekindled public denunciation of naval presence in Vieques. However, many years before that, in 1971, a series of demonstrations against U.S. military involvement in the coast of Culebra were taking place. Luis Rivera Pagan, along with 12 other Puerto Ricans, took part in a set of peaceful protests across the coast of Culebra, targeting the specific areas where naval bombing was occurring. U.S. soldiers violently arrested the protesters, taking them to San Juan in helicopters and sending them to trial, where they were sentenced to 3 months in federal prison. After his release, Rivera Pagan was investigated by the FBI, where all of his information, as well as the information of the 12 other protesters, was filed into what is known as a carpeta. Because of this involvement in these protests, the government continuously spied on him, taking note of wherever he went, all he did, his family records, political affiliation, bank accounts, and many other personal things. Long before its establishment as the Commonwealth in 1952, Puerto Rico had been set under a military regime, where the U.S. Navy established bases in San Juan and Culebra. After officially becoming a part of the U.S., the Army returned and reestablished its military headquarters in Culebra. Over the span of World War II, the U.S. Navy was including and using the island as a key base of operations, mainly to have more cover and defense over the Caribbean as a way to protect the Panama Canal and as a training and bombing range. In 1941, President Roosevelt had ordered the airspace existing above Culebra to be used exclusively by the U.S. military. This included a radius of water, specifically targeting 1,700 acres of the island, meaning the Navy had full control over 1/3 of Culebra's land and all of its coastline. This land was used as a bombing range, with little to no care for the island's civilian population. Culebra was constantly used for intensive practice by the military, mostly serving as the target for naval gunnery and missiles. Because of this constant firing on the island, and because of the shooting range's close proximity to residential sectors, there were multiple misfires and stray shots that found themselves landing on residents' private homes, as well as in public beaches that were popular spots. The U.S. kept control over it even after World War II, and throughout the Cold War, displacing the local population and paving the way for future health and environmental issues that still haunt Puerto Rico today. So, in 1971, 13 brave Puerto Ricans took it upon themselves to protest against this blatant disregard for the Puerto Rican citizens living in Culebra and for the island itself. The U.S. military gave up its occupation of Culebra in 1975, but remained in Vieques. Almost 30 years after these protests in 1999, people began to make some noise on the coast of Vieques Island. Between 1941 to 1943, the U.S. military took control of over 75% of the island. 21,000 acres of Vieques were used as storage bases for hundreds of explosives and military weapons, such as bazookas, tanks, and ships, and as a practice range, where jets, tanks, and helicopters were used to test out firing capabilities, weapons testing, and land maneuvers. The island is only 33,000 acres of land. That means its residents were forced into the middle of the island, only being able to inhabit 12,000 acres of something that was originally free in its totality, surrounded by consistent bombings. From 1983 to 1998, the U.S. Navy dropped approximately 17,783 tons of bombs on Vieques. This led to severe pollution of the environment, as well as health complications for the Viequense civilians. A grand majority of the contamination in Vieques came from this constant military activity. The soil of these bombing zones was contaminated with heavy metals, cyanide, arsenic, depleted uranium, and radioactive materials, among other toxic things, which all led to health complications amongst the local population, such as cancer, heart disease, and breathing and nervous system disorders. Eventually, on April 19, 1999, the accidental death of David Sanes Rodriguez was the last straw. The biggest protest the island had ever seen against the U.S. military was underway. A Navy jet has mistakenly dropped a 500-pound bomb on a military observation post, a mile away from the intended target range, killing the 35-year-old Vieques resident and on-duty guard. This tragedy inspired the protests that would rise all over the island of Puerto Rico. On February 21, 2000, thousands of Boricua gathered in the Expressway Las Americas in Atorrey to protest and march against the military invasion of the United States in Vieques. Rubén Berríos, president of the PIP, Puerto Rican Independence Party, as well as José Aponte, the mayor of Carolina from the PPD, Popular Democratic Party, and Senator Norma Burgos from the PNP, New Progressive Party, though each wanting different things for the island, independence, remainder as the Commonwealth, and statehood, rallied together to protect Vieques and were incarcerated for doing so. Despite the many arrests, these protests eventually led to the permanent shutdown of Vieques' naval base after over 60 years of operation in 2003.